Hello.
So are we taking meeting notes in the best practices working group notes or where? I see
Scroll
a
down,
no.
please,
Scroll.
in the Zoom chats.
Okay.
I apologize for my deeper than normal voice. I'm dealing with some nonsense here. Welcome, everybody, to the August 3rd edition of the Best SIG, the OpenSSF's Education SIG. As is tradition here in our group, we will start off asking if we have any new friends to the team that wanted to introduce themselves and say hello. All right. Can I please get some assistance today, scribing some notes? Thank you, David.
I will attempt also.
Oh, thank you, Other David. Many hands make light work. I was away last week. Could I potentially beg the group to give me a short minute or so recap on what we talked about during our last call?
Sure. Start that off. So last time we talked mostly about the plan and we reviewed the information. It's in the second bullet down under meeting notes. It was the document we were using. And basically we were started at the top, worked our way down through all the proposed changes based on feedback and things we've talked about in various meetings. We add some additional information as part of those discussions, but basically we've gone through and approved all the changes. I mean, approved as far as within this group, all the changes down to 4.3. That's as far as we got.
You all moved very quickly last week.
And we tried to keep to your highlighting scheme to show changes and additions and that sort of thing to make it easy to see what happened. There was a plethora of comments as well, but we made some pretty good progress last week.
Great. Does anyone have anything else to add to Dave's short recap?
Yeah, just quickly, that Dave did a bang up job of leading the group, and so huge props to Dave, and thank you for that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David.
My pleasure.
Let's see, do we have anyone have any opens they wanted to talk about before we started back at section 4.3 of the plan? All right, let us throw our eyes on section 4.3, which currently reads, expand education materials to cover 5 critical languages and ecosystems more in depth, e.g. C, C++, JavaScript, Node, TypeScript, Java, Python, Rust, Go, .NET Core. So we added in C++ and .NET Core, and we're estimating this is going to be about a half a person by 5. That's a little odd. So we need 5 half people. So the original folks suggested to be able to add additional language content to the existing materials. So are we happy with the addition of C and C++ and .NET Core as possible targets to add additional content for?
Can you define content and what context more content?
So today we have the securing software fundamentals class that Mr. Wheeler was instrumental in crafting. And what languages do you predominantly talk about or give examples for now, David? Or is it just very generic?
I don't actually have any statistics, but I think we have like 14 different programming languages represented, something along that line.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
because the goal is to not say there's only one, part of the goal is to show that you know it's not just one programming language that you can write vulnerabilities in.
Check.
So the buffer overflow and such is primarily C, I think some C++, but most of the rest of it is just kind of smatterings all over the map.
Check. Well, I'm asking because Microsoft is also helping us to write .NET Core labs. So we might also have some. I think they were contributing around. I think the magic number was 30 labs, or with vulnerabilities in them. Yeah, that's
Wow,
pretty
that's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
And the intent was, especially in practical tools like SKF, we're actually doing some of the work. We would want to make sure we had examples that resonated with the developer learner. So if we needed to, we would augment labs in whatever additional languages, preferably starting from this list.
Check. Cool.
All right. And do we think that 5 half people is appropriate? So that's somebody's half-time job for a period of time, developing these labs and examples.
That one's harder to estimate, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that'll be
Eh,
someone else's responsibility to figure out soon.
I have to admit, it would probably be helpful to try to coordinate between some of these various ones,
Yeah.
because many of the same problems, of course, occur across multiple languages.
Yeah. But what I envision here is we're going to finish up this plan, and then we're going to find some awesome collaborators that are interested in owning certain sections or certain goals to help refine and add more details. And that's where things like 5 half people would ideally be sussed out in more detail to be a little more prescriptive on what we're looking for this particular task. And I agree, there's going to be common out. Many developers are polyglots. They can bounce across different languages. And then even some of these tasks, like for example, 4.2, where we have develop in-person educator-led variations of training materials. Maybe even one of those developers we have making labs is a trainer, for example, and we might be able to share headcount there. So we'll figure those details out in the next phase.
Quick nit, can we say C#/.NET Core? Everything else is a programming language, but .NET Core actually isn't.
Sure. This is our document, not my document, David.
I see. Okay.
It's open source. We can make it say whatever we want it to.
I'm hoping we'll result in something that makes sense.
All right. So it sounds like we're all in agreement with this one. And then in particular, expand labs based off of class materials. We're looking at acquiring 2 people to do this. Do we feel, in light of the additional languages possibly, do we think that that feels appropriate right now?
I'm actually a little bit worried that this one falls short. So you're hiring 5 for the content, but for the actual, I mean, labs, from my experience, are much more intensive, and someone has to have a full fluency in the language. So I would say you need to bump this up to at least 3.
Would we be better off maybe combining 4.3 and 4.4 and then stating we're going to need full-time people and figure out what a good number is? I agree, Sal. I think 2 is too small.
Yeah. And the one thing that would want really to be in this content is, like, security researchers would be great for this, but you need someone that can also speak to the variable cybersecurity concerns from the different contribution models in these spaces, right? There's a reason why there's a lot more malicious injections in Python than Java. and people need to understand the context.
I think that would be very useful additional material. So what does the group feel? Do we combine these two into one statement
Combine
and
them.
then tweak the
Yeah.
count?
I can't even figure out how to manage them as two separate items. So,
Yeah, okay.
you know, in more depth include out. So how about this? More depth, including labs. Let me just type in my proposal, including
Oh,
lab
please. Yeah, just do that.
materials. How about that? In more depth, including lab materials. And if we bump that up to a person each, a person each.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, you're gonna get much better content if the labs come from the person that built the content. So
Right.
Mhm.
And if we do that, we let's see here, 1 times 5. I come out to basically a doubling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Any additional feedback on these before we move on to 4 or 5?
Just a quick question. These people, their remit will be only to prepare the content, not necessarily to deliver the content.
Yes, that's their focus. If they also can train, great, but that's not what we're looking to hire them for or to have those folks donated for.
This actually
Okay.
raises an issue. Is this educational materials for like self-service over a computer? Is this a material? Is this a bunch of PowerPoint slides intended to be given in the university? What materials are we talking about here?
Yes,
Yeah.
all of the
And
above.
I do think we need to, if these people are going to be doing double duty of training and writing materials, which frankly, as somebody who does a lot of, has done a lot of training and a lot of presentations and the like, it is a lot easier to do that sort of stuff if you have written and prepared it. But not necessarily. But if we're going to do that, we need to be aware of that as we look at other points in this document for training, and we will need to adjust numbers accordingly. Also, we have to keep in mind that it takes a great deal of time to do both of these things. So
Yeah.
even if you are, essentially we're asking them to write a book about secure development practices in C#, in Python, in whatever, and then present it. So that's just an FYI. I don't think it necessarily requires any changes to the documents right now, but it's something to keep in mind. I'm sorry, Dave, please go ahead.
No problem. No. Good,
Oh,
good
other
points.
David, sorry, other Dave has his hand up.
Sorry.
Thank you. No worries. I just wanted to point out, and I think this is good to get this stuff specified, that if you look up at 4.1, we use very similar language, expand, improve training content and training materials, including train the trainer stuff. And then we have it again here, 4.2. 4.2 is in-person specific, and then 4.3 is expanding education materials, language specific. So just keep in mind that we have a couple different line items that are, there's a little bit of overlap there.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
as
think,
things,
Go
I
ahead,
think
Vicki.
as things settle down and we consolidate the document out of its tabular form into another one, that's when we'll end up having some reconciliations at that point. So
yeah. So for example, if Vicky feels very excited about managing the 4.0 section, I would ask whomever, Vicky and whoever else she works with to look at items like that and try to find efficiencies or duplications. And as we have a final draft prepared, we would work out those nuances and overlaps. For example,
David has his hand raised.
I see that.
Yeah, so I see expand education materials, but I don't understand what materials are being created. So I added a question at the bottom. I assumed that we were talking about computer-based training because of scale, but are we actually talking about slides or a
Yeah.
doc to read, or
Yes.
what is this? All the
Yes.
above?
Yeah, we need to, and potentially like these particular people, these developers that are primarily focused on maybe writing labs or they're language specialists, they might create the lab, and then we would have other folks potentially sit with them or collaborate with them to create a classroom-based session or a webinar, or we could suck out some of that information and make it a blog or a podcast or something. But we would have to, we need to figure out where we're going to start, where the kernel of the content is going to originate from, and then see what avenues we want to, what channels we want to deliver it in.
All right, all right. For each this, all right. So I'm
And we
trying
will
to
need to, in the final plan, we will have to do exactly what you're doing, David. We have to write down, we will do this, this, and this.
right, right. But I think at least in this particular case, I think it's important to start noting that now, because if that's the goal, then we need to be clear about the scope enough so we can actually execute it and get it done.
Yeah, because for example, maybe the folks only can do the CBT and the doc, and they can't do the actual class preparation. So we need to start thinking through that. So yeah, let's have start throwing the list of what our actual scope is going to be, so that we can resource that effectively.
Yeah,
Christine.
I think to David's point, if you think about the material, or if it's like something like video content, the cost could go up. If it's something like you need some presentations with a lot of graphics, then you need like maybe a graphic person or UI UX person across the board. So it's thoughts like that that can come into the cost.
absolutely.
That's excellent feedback.
Yeah, if I may, I actually worked with the Linux training folks. They actually discourage videos as soon as you get to any serious length, and the reason is it's basically impossible to keep them up to date.
Yeah.
For short pieces of information, it's great, but there's no opportunity to collaborate. There's no opportunity to edit easily. And basically, this is the problem that SafeCode encountered. They've got some really nice videos that, most of them are obsolete. Obsolete's a little strong, but there's a lot of stuff that really could use updating, and it's so expensive that it basically highly discourages it, which is why the course originally I had envisioned all videos, and they said we could do that, but you don't want to do that. And after a lot of discussions, in spite of, I am actually not that pig-headed. My mind can be changed. So, but I think they're right. It doesn't mean that we can't ever have videos, but just there are negatives to it that we have to be aware of. And somehow I'm going to lower my hand. There it is.
If I could just jump in here, going through the
Please.
chat, Georg, I will send you a request. Unfortunately, I don't get access requests for this document, so I've been watching the chat
I'm going.
to add people. I can add. That's not a problem. If anyone needs
okay.
access, just put it in the chat if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, thank you. I just saw that you, or
No
thought
worries.
that you granted access to other folks before. So yeah, sorry. Okay.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Yeah, and we may decide, like, for example, secure coding principles is a near timeless topic, and that might be something that lends itself to a video. But potentially dealing with memory safety issues, especially based on languages, that might be something that doesn't lend itself. So we will need to spend a lot of time figuring out like what content we want and how we want that, what channel we want that delivered in. All right. Moving on, can we move on to 4.5? All right. Our next item was to expand secure development through thought leadership, through blogs, webinars, podcasts. And we're looking at one person, looks like basically just for production editing. Any disagreement there? All right. How did we do this?
Just a quick comment. I think that's going to be multiple people part-time, but I mean, as an estimator,
Yes.
fine.
Yes. Yeah, probably. How did we work last week, David? Did we just address the items that changed, or did we go through each item?
We focused on the changes, but we stopped at each item just in case someone had something to add or contribute. The goal here, just I guess to remind everybody, the goal for this exercise is really at a high level to go through the plan, review the changes and conversations we've had, make sure we're all at least generally on the same page. And then the next step is going to be to dive into these sections in greater detail, probably with smaller groups. And that's when a lot of these conversations I think should happen as far as the specific who's and what's and hows that come into play, and understanding that, you know, after those conversations, some of the numbers may need to change or things may need to be massaged and altered.
Okay. Excellent. So where we don't have changes, I'll just read and highlight. And if anyone has any thoughts, please raise your hand or shout out, and we'll focus in on the items that are highlighted for change. Section 4.6, expand existing certification and badge systems to be displayed in source code repositories, OpenSSF tooling like best practices badge and scorecard, and systems like LinkedIn to expand the digital and physical badge recognition and rewards. Any thoughts on that? All right, 4.7, staff a partnerships office, develop relationships for content delivery. So this was folks that are focused full-time on getting our content picked up by academics or presented at conferences or included into boot camps or things like Girls Who Code or whatnot. Marta.
What you explain is not how I read this point. In fact, how I read it is the content distribution in terms of the load balancing of videos and stuff like that, and not bring it to academia. So probably we need to clarify.
Like, for example, we've talked several times. We want to talk to IEEE or the U.S. Department of Education. I'm not going to do that because I have other stuff to do. So we will hire someone to go out and kind of help establish these relationships, to go out and make those connections and to try to get our content adopted. That was the intent of this. Does that clarify a little better for you?
Yeah, so for this, for these two people, I would really want them to be really specified, someone that has previous experience in this kind of partnership.
Yeah. Yes.
So it sounds like this would break down by government and federal partnerships, and then educational partnerships, and find someone with that specific domain.
Mm-hmm. And do we think like we've talked about targeting historically Black colleges and universities? And so are there folks that specialize in that, or would that be just a general academic expert potentially, do you think?
No, there are definitely people that specialize in this in educational partnerships for new curriculums. So they're going to be sitting more in like the entrepreneurship offices spaces. But if you have the right language in that job description, you'll catch them. If you don't do that, we're just going to get a bunch of education content creators, which can't do these partnerships effectively.
And we've also talked about targeting like a trade schooly boot camp style people, like I mentioned Girls Who Code a couple times, and we call out a few of those programs and projects. So again, I think it's in order to get that penetration of the content, we need to have someone focused on building those relationships and kind of forging those partnerships. Is this linked to 6? Not necessarily, Judy. The certificate, for example, we have the best practices badge today, and that it does great and it shows up a limited amount of places. So we want to focus some effort to maybe get LinkedIn to call an API and show that David Wheeler earned a best practices badge for the best practices badge project. And we'd like to show that up in his LinkedIn profile or his Linux Foundation profile or whatever targets we want. So it's just not the same as someone that's focused on getting our curriculum input into things like the federal governments and colleges, universities. So it's a little different.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I read that. No, sorry. Oops, I put on my camera. I read that also as those were the people who were going to actually do 2.6, 2.7, but okay. Thanks for explaining.
You're welcome. It's slightly different. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, help me out here. So what about taking the various courses? Is that in a different place?
Taking the various courses.
You know, if I took a course in developing in the fundamentals or the SKF course or some of these more advanced courses focusing on particular programming languages, would that not where does that show up in LinkedIn and GitHub and such?
That, you mean what goal here on our sheet?
Yes.
That'd be 4.6.
Yeah,
So
that's
4.
not what it
4.6.
says.
What's that?
Yeah, that's not what it says.
Expand certification and badging systems to be displayed in source code repositories, LinkedIn.
Okay. Okay.
We
I
can
think
modify
you may be
that.
looking at different things here,
Yeah,
folks.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify this. If that's
Okay.
the goal,
Please.
can we copy paste? By the way,
Yes.
I just discovered that I can add people to as commenters on this doc. So if you reload this page, if you're on it but reload, you may have more privileges now.
That's right.
So
And you can see comments too. I don't think you can see comments if you're just a viewer, David.
okay. So
Chrome,
I'm sorry, which David?
This David.
This thing.
I'm looking at
David,
2.6 and 2.7, which is on page 3 of this document. 2.6 is no 2.6 and 2.7,
2.6,
which is on page 3.
Gotcha.
And it, to me, it says almost exactly the same thing.
Yes.
This is back to Judy's question as far as
Yes.
establishing these relationships. I'm not sure where the
I didn't
badging
see the
stuff
2,
is
Judy. I
coming in.
apologize. Yes, no, 2.6 is almost exactly. It's actually more precise than the 4 section. I apologize for that.
Okay, well, I don't think they're the same. They were intended to be the same at all, but
It's
clearly
really, that's a very specific target audience we want to hit, and it's related to the 4.
It seems like 4.6 is how to execute to make 2.6 happen.
Yeah, I don't think that's
No
true at
reason
all,
to
actually.
People who were going to execute 2.6, 2.7. Maybe not.
I feel
Yeah,
2.6 is a specific instance of 4.7.
Yeah, 2.6 and 2.7 are about connecting to traditional educational systems. And if I took a computer-based training course, I would still want 4.6 to execute. In fact, that's probably even more important in that case. I think the problem here is that 4.6 needs some clarification, and that's okay. You know, expand certificate and badge systems so that can I just kind of verbally so that completion of training education in these areas will or can be or will be displayed in source code repositories, GitHub, GitLab, right? Tooling and systems LinkedIn and Indeed. Why I don't know why Indeed has been dropped.
There.
I think we spoke about this last week. I remember having the conversation about Creditly was another place to display your badge or your certification.
Yeah, let's add that in as well. And then to address your original question, Judy, the staffing that partnership office to deliver that content, I feel that's related to the 2.6 and 2.7. Those are specific instances of partnerships we want to execute on.
Can I call these LinkedIn and Indeed job search?
Yeah, that's
I
cool.
mean, I know they're more than that, but I mean, that's what I think most people use them as. Okay, so I'm hoping that we've now clarified these.
All right, so do we, looking at David's update to 4.6 in the middle column, are we still okay with that as written? And can we leave it approved? I like it.
Yeah, I think it's good.
All right. So we'll leave that approved. 4.7, do we want to, and as we refine the document, do we want to expand that to include 2.6 and 2.7, or do we want to move 4.7 up to the 2 section? Where does it make most sense to exist?
Does this need to be a higher level? So 2.6, 2.7 is a low, is, you know, I don't know how it works in other countries. In Ireland, you have the Higher Education Authority who would delegate out to universities and schools. So are those people going to actually go in at a very high level? I still think you need people to create partnerships at a lower level, but is this particularly government bodies, higher level targets?
I think we need to refine it to be more explicit. Mr. Rousseau?
The way that this is organized is section 2 is about expanding education. So that's what we want to do to expand education. Section 4 is the first 6 to 18 months of execution of how we want to do certain things. So I don't necessarily think it needs to be in one spot or the other. I think what we're doing is in here, maybe inadvertently, is we're calling out the first 6 to 18 months. This is how we want to execute to work toward the goal that's listed in 2.6, 2.7. Does that make sense? Or am I off base?
No, I feel that's right on target. And Christine agrees.
Christine agrees that we're good.
Vicky, you had your hand up real quick.
Yeah, it's because I was looking for the thumb and I accidentally got the hand.
Oh, all right. All right. Well, Vicky also agrees. Cool. All right, Roger Dodger. Anything more? I think we need to 4.7. I think needs to be refined to account for a little more specificity. We've got some, Marta and I put some notes, but I think that can be dealt with when the small group gets together. They can rephrase a high level statement and then kind of put specific targets when we do that next revision. Does that feel reasonable? Okay. Moving on to 4.8, means tested scholarships for taking and passing courses. So we wanted to create a scholarship for secure coding and make sure that people take a test in math. Nice. Are we okay with developing some type of scholarship program? And we bumped up the number to 350,000. Do we think that's enough for the first year and a half?
I think that was just a correction of the math that was wrong in the initial text.
Oh, that's why I said math. All right. Yeah. Nice. So are we okay with that, Judy?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I think I came across this, David would know more about this than me, a fantastic scholarship program in the Linux Foundation. Are we considering creating our own one or plugging in and developing existing ones or adding on to? Is that feasible, or what is this our scholarship?
If the LF has something in existence, I would rather connect into their existing plumbing. I think that would be quicker to deliver.
Yeah, I put a link into it in our collection of information docs
Okay.
as I found it. It was new to me. It looks great.
But in principle, we all agree we should create a scholarship to help encourage people to take the coursework and use the learning that they've gone through. All right, I got a thumbs up. Next item, 4.9, contact ACM IEEE to add accreditation requirements and help integrate it in, and we stop that thought. So first off, I need to finish that sentence, and then next, we all agree this is a good target to get our content over to.
I mean, we're at 4.9. I mean, if they're the folks, if there's anybody else, I don't know who they are.
4.9, and we kind of the last part of that sentence is either not complete or is not properly formed.
Okay.
Vicky.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know that David has tilted at this windmill in the past and has some experience with this, but I still think it's worth trying again.
Oh yeah,
because it's certainly important enough, and I think perhaps they'll have gained a bit of perspective since it was last attempted, and having the kind of cred of OpenSSF behind the endeavor may help make it happen. So yay, big +1.
I agree. If many of you might have heard, there was a recent meeting at the US White House where representatives from many organizations, including Jim Zemlin from the LF, were there, and they talked. It was focused on cybersecurity education, and this working group was name dropped a lot. So I feel that that might be additional motivation to help encourage organizations like IEEE to rethink their original stances.
yeah. Let me point into the curricula.
All right, are we happy with the update? I like it that it's a sentence now.
Yeah, and I think there is one minor thing that we need to be careful. I don't know how to phrase this. They're going to be really interested in ensuring that any security stuff stays in the cybersecurity ghetto, and we need to make sure that that's I don't know how else to say it. They have added security requirements to the cybersecurity curricula. Just don't let anybody else learn about this stuff. So in not just in, I don't know how else to say that. Not just in cybersecurity ghetto. And if somebody has a better phrase for it, that's great. I'm saying that informally because I'm not sure how to say it more formally, but
It's not isolated in the cybersecurity domain, maybe.
not just must absolutely must not be isolated into just the cybersecurity
Domain.
domain. Domain's good. What's all the green background, by the way?
Green was to denote additions or changes.
Okay. All right.
All right. So are we happy with that? I am.
Oh, I'm sorry. This must absolutely not be I think is more grammatically correct.
Marta.
For the formulation, I would prefer a positive statement than a negative statement.
Yes.
Okay. All right. This must be included in all domains, not just isolated in cybersecurity domain. Fair
How's that
point.
read,
Better.
Marta?
Yeah, I mean, I would specify the domains that work best with this are DevOps and SRE at this moment.
Those are not areas that they
Yeah, they're not.
recognize.
Yeah, they're not IEEE though.
Yeah, they talk about various other curricula grouped into computer engineering, computer science.
Yeah,
data
but
science.
reliability is a major aspect of what IEEE's platform focuses on, right? And
I
security-
don't know that that's true. That sounds like a good idea. I don't know that that's true. If you
Someone will
go
get to
click and
investigate
actually
that.
look, well, I mean, if you go click and start looking at the CS curricula about what they actually care about, they're interested in algorithms and operating systems and programming languages.
So it sounds like we'll need to spend a little time in the future refining that. But at least today, does that meet our goal of accounting for this area? All right, let us move on to 410. This was added. We wanted to incentivize maintainers to take the courses. Maintainer, I'm going to say, maintainer developers, and we talked about identifying potentially maintainers from top projects and have them find some way to upskill them for taking the class, encourage employers to hire people that take these classes, scholarships, grants for developers, add requirements, add the class taking and certification as requirements for some projects that you must have this to work on that or attain a certain level of contribution. We want to develop a why is this important to me one pager. We wanted to potentially highlight the most secure open source project. That sounds fun. We wanted to support and mentor developers as they take the training, have like an Ask Us Anything webinar, office hours, actual one-on-one mentoring. Encourage devs to identify successors, and then potentially offer things like tickets to conferences or training as incentive for taking the training. So how do we feel about this addition? Any other ideas we want to add in? Yes, Mr. Rousseau.
Yeah.
I think this is a very good addition. However, I think all the letters listed under there are very tactical execution tasks.
Yes.
That would probably be better vetted and refined when we break that down into a smaller group.
Agreed.
Huge
So would
plus
you
one.
hack them or leave them there just as reference?
I think we should just leave incentivize maintainers, developers to take the courses or some general statement that covers what the goal is.
Mhm.
Maybe move that stuff into the second column so we don't lose it and say this needs to be refined by that group that's looking at it. There's a lot of good suggestions on there. I don't want to lose any of that.
Yes. Does that alteration make your dream a reality, David?
You just made my day.
All right. Judy,
Got some questions.
did you have a question or comment, Judy?
Oh, no, we're having an off-topic conversation.
Okay, sorry.
Jeez.
And I
Ricardo.
think her hand was up from before.
Oh, all
Oh
right.
no, was I still up? Did I hit it by accident? Oh gosh, hold on, lower hand. This new thing is problematic.
I know.
Between people on mute and it's turned into a comedy sketch.
Ricardo, did you have a question or statement? All right. Mr. Wheeler.
Yeah. Two quick things. Sorry to go backwards, but on the accreditation, you originally said add security to. I said add more to security to. More about security, because they will argue, hey, there's some in there, and it's just obviously not adequate for need. So but I didn't want to make a change without the group being aware of that and being able to complain if that's not right. As far as the ideas for more depth, I don't know if this is a complete list, but I think these are all cool ideas worth discussing. How do we turn this into? Do we need to? Is it okay that we just make a list and we say, hey, we're going to try a number of things and we adjust throughout the year? Or
I think we would have the small group, whoever takes this up to refine this particular section. I think we're going to need to have a list of what we're going to commit to in the first year. So the first 12 to 18 months, we will do these things. And then if we had extra things in the backlog, we can show exemplars that if we have more resources or we get done more quickly, or in year 2, we would move on to. So, but we definitely want to have a list of things we will commit to do X, Y, and Z. Vicky.
So I just wanted to point out that for 410, you essentially, instead of, I would have expected all of those lettered bullet points. Is that a thing? Lettered bullet points to be removed in that center column rather than just moved to the center column, because the center column is the edited version,
Yes.
right? And it's okay. I mean, I figured just drop it in a comment. Just quote, drop it in a comment. Sorry, shouldn't use just in that way.
Does that fulfill your dream?
You know, my heart's desire has been found.
All righty. Ricardo.
Yeah, so let me try again. So if you look at incentivize, I would say it will also be very closely coupled with the reputation that you have, right? If you have like really on point material and everybody says like, okay, this course is kick-ass, then well, there you get your incentivization. Darn, what a word.
Yes, it is.
You know, I think the best example for that one is with the offensive security course stuff, right? Where everybody says like, yeah, try harder. And they really have like the reputation if like, hey, if you follow that stuff, you know, you learn something there, right? And I think then ultimately that boils down to that the community decides the value of the certification or the courses that we're providing. So I think, yeah, reputation building, like make sure that we have awesome stuff. Yeah, and then from there, I think you get that snowball effect, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, that said, I'm not excited about removing the details. I mean, in order to estimate A, costs, and B, did we accomplish this, I think it'd be helpful to have a little more detail than just say incentivize. Can we restore the list and then just remove the parts that seem kind of dubious?
We can do whatever the group desires. if the group would like that, I would be glad. It'll take hundreds of hours to do, but I would be glad to do it.
Oh, no, well, it better not take that long. I was just saying, take that list. I think item B is probably the most tricky. So if we just deleted that, oh no, there are letters, but not the same letters. I'm sure there's a right click and select the magic button. Restart
Yeah.
numbering at A.
There we go.
Woohoo. All right, so I would suggest, why don't we keep it, but remove at least B, because although I think we want to encourage employers to hire these people, that's much harder to figure out. But if we deleted that, now maybe the scholarships, has that already been covered elsewhere?
So we have the means tested scholarships. We have that above.
Okay, I guess that's other kinds of scholarships. Add requirements for some open source projects. I don't know that we can do that. Basically, let's take that list and then trim off the ones that may be dubious to do and leave only the ones that we're relatively confident we want to do.
Okay. And then as Sal also mentioned in the chat, how can we integrate sauce rewards?
Yeah, because I mean, this bullet point really speaks to what fundamentally do we need to do to upskill the maintainer class already in the ecosystem. But a lot of these bullet points are general education and evangelism. So I think a lot of these bullet points need to go other places. When we're focusing on maintainer education, engagement, and compensation, we can lean on things like sos.dev that are already developed to be centered on contributors and maintainers of these projects, making concrete and valuable changes. I'd prioritize those over having a maintainer take a cybersecurity course right now.
I think the challenge, I love sos.dev. I think one challenge, at least historically, is
You're muted, David.
Oops. Yeah, you're back in now. We lost you for a second.
Oh, okay, very
We
sorry.
lost you at historically.
Historically, sos.dev has been more someone proposes something and then responds, which is sensible. I mean, nobody can know everything. But I would like to think that this would have a proactive part. Now, if the proactive part is reach out, contact them, recommend it, and then the next step is go talk to sos.dev. Sure, that would make sense. But
Yeah, well, I'm doing exactly this right now. So I'm trying to get all the CNCF maintainers to get to 100% security on their CLO monitor. I'm providing them basic training around those for the scorecard. And then, right, we enable them to highlight that to SOS Dev. It's just a matter of connecting the dots in the user experience, but we have all the elements we need to cover a lot of these points already.
okay.
Go
ahead.
Should we add a bullet point, as Sal stated it, to connect the dots to SOS Dev? Like a letter I?
Yeah, that'd be good.
And we can redistribute some of these to other points if they're good points, but maybe better somewhere else. I just don't want to lose it. Let's throw away bad ideas, but if there's something we really want to do and that's worth doing, then I want it somewhere.
Yeah, this is one of the most valuable sections, I think, of this. But this is basically a massive, massive call to action that I think doesn't exactly align with what it labels. Yeah. So that connect the dots can actually just go straight into the E section. So we can provide awards, which I think is, that's saying like highlight them, but what you really should do is pay them for their time and efforts, right? So
it says to, I'm not sure the from is clear. Can we say connect the dots from developers to projects like sos.dev?
We'll put that up under,
oops, don't.
I put it up under E.
Okay.
And I'm going to massage it from there.
Alrighty. Yeah, I don't think this is awarding most, I think this is its own point. I don't think it's the same thing as awarding the most secure.
Yeah.
We can make a trophy.
Okay. When you say connect the dots, I want to know who the from and who the to is.
So now F, does that kind of meet what you were talking about, Sal?
Yeah. Do you just want to add into this language? I think I can type right on this.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
Okay, here we
Please,
go.
yeah.
Everybody's welcome to type.
Clear and guaranteed contribution model. Not contribution, compensation model. Because we are also having an issue of things that do sometimes get highlighted even to the new SOS dev thing and then just get ignored. So we really need to make that a clear pathway.
Okay, you mean ensure there is a clear and guaranteed compensation model? Is
Yeah.
that-
There
Okay,
needs to be a place where an open source maintainer can go to see a checklist of things that if they complete, not only does their project become more secure, but they know that they will be compensated, respected, and acknowledged for their time.
I suspect they'll some pre-approvables will be necessary for a guarantee, but I agree with the goal there.
All right, folks, we are at the top of the hour. Excellent conversation today. Thank you all for your contributions.
Mhm.
We will pick up at section 411 next time. If you have any suggestions on tweaking 410 for additional refinement or ideas, or even like knacking like I did with C, we'll move that to somewhere else. So I'm going to remove approved, David. So we'll come back and quickly touch on 410, and we'll start it there next time. So thank you, everybody.
so much.
Well, hey, before you head out, C-Rob and David, I actually really
Yes.
do need to talk to both of you rather
Okay.
urgently for some of the stuff that I'm doing here.
Okay.
Can I
Oh,
set up
okay.
a time for us to chat separately, maybe later this week? I'll
Please.
just put it on your calendars.
I'm here right now. Do you want to talk right now, Crobe? Can you
Hey.
stick around for a moment?
I'm actually open right now if you're open.
Absolutely.
All right.
Cool.
Are we recording?
We are. I'm going to stop the recording.